This week on Forever Spinning, we dive into Kendrick Lamar's classic, Good Kid, M.A.A.D City. Kendrick Lamar Duckworth, better known as Kendrick Lamar, was born and raised in Compton, California. Growing up, he was put face to face with the dangers of the world on a daily basis. While drugs and gangs captivated Kendrick and the rest of Compton's youth, he never wavered and caved to the mounting aggressions outside of his front door. Instead, he would write stories and poems about the hardships of living in Compton. And eventually, he would take these stories and add music, and boom. That's the Kendrick Lamar we know and love today. Well, not exactly. While Kendrick's rise to stardom was rather quick, it was not overnight. He worked extremely hard on his craft, releasing mixtapes and other various tracks, and eventually garnered the attention of hip-hop legend Dr. Dre. From there, he was signed to Top Dawg Entertainment and released his first studio album, Section 80, in mid-2011. Kendrick immediately started working on his sophomore album. This time, however, Kendrick wanted to pick a concept and stick with it the entire time. And what better concept than a short film on growing up in the streets of Compton? He wanted to pay homage and respect to where he came from and the people he was raised with. He used the name Good Kid, M.A.A.D City not just to talk about himself, but rather all of the people around him from his youth. Kendrick firmly believes that all of those people, from drug dealers and gang members to everyone in between, they were all good at one point, but all became corrupted by this M.A.A.D City. So Kendrick took this idea and ran with it. And on October 22nd, 2012, Good Kid, M.A.A.D City was released on Top Dawg Entertainment. The first single from the acclaimed Good Kid, M.A.A.D City was The Recipe, which was released on April 3rd, 2012. The single boasts a feature by Dr. Dre and production by Scoop DeVale. Kendrick and Dre rap about all California has to offer over quick and snapping drum beats. However, according to the two rap legends, the only reason that people come to California in the first place is for the women, weed, and weather. Women, Weed, and Weather was actually the working title of this track until they decided on The Recipe, referencing that Women, Weed, and Weather was actually just the recipe of what made California so popular. This single gives solid insight into what Good Kid is all about, the views that Kendrick has on his home state, and more specifically, his hometown. Next up is the single Swimming Pools Drank, which was released on July 31st, 2012. This track ended up peaking at number 17 on the US Billboard Hot 100, as well as becoming certified gold. This track captures the essence of peer pressure and alcoholism through an inner monologue from Kendrick and his conscience. Sure, this track sounds like a club anthem, and it inevitably became one, but reality is that Kendrick wrote this song to prove that you have a choice in your habits. He says that growing up, he only saw casual drinkers or flat-out drunks, really nothing in between. Kendrick doesn't necessarily view drinking as a bad thing, but he views excessive consumption and alcoholism to be vices. Backseat Freestyle is the third single to drop from Good Kid, M.A.A.D City. This track is more or less paying homage to sitting inside of a friend's car and rapping over a beat just for the fun of it. Those car freestyles could be anything, from absurd and funny to flaunting and boastful. And this track does just that, saying outlandish and simply ridiculous things just for the sake of saying them. This song acts more of a flashback in the grand scheme of the LP. Kendrick even admits that the words on this song are bizarre, but it emphasizes the whole idea of a good kid in a mad city. Kendrick raps about these absurd things to impress his friends, or, in context of the album, to impress his city. And this track truly is one of the most fun songs on the album, as it's funny and crazy, yet thoughtful and stays true to its roots. The final single I want to cover from this album is Poetic Justice featuring Drake. This song only became a single due to the popularity of the track off the LP itself. This slow burner of a track feels like Kendrick wrote it while watching a rainfall through a large window. And this track serves a huge purpose in the theme of the album. So to jump back a little bit, the first track off this LP is all about Kendrick falling in love with a girl named Shireen. He fantasizes about her and talks about her very frequently. It's his first love interest. And because of that, Kendrick can't look past her looks, becoming oblivious to the fact that her and her family are part of gang violence. And this song's title plays heavy in this role as well. Poetic justice, in a very short and easy way to explain it, is just karma. If you have good intentions and virtue, you will receive the best in life. But if you have ulterior motives full of vices, you will benefit from nothing. In this case, all Kendrick wants to do is sleep with this woman, and in the end, he ends up getting jumped by two dudes in hoods, which is again a reference to the first song off this track and the ending skit that comes with it. This track wraps up a long-standing theme of this album, which then causes the album to turn to this track's Good Kid and M.A.A.D City. This is the short story Kendrick is talking about and is the crux of the concept for this LP. Basically, have good virtue no matter what, because the city of Compton will make you turn to your vices. Thus, the idea of a good kid in a mad city. While this is not my favorite Kendrick album, it's an extremely important piece of art in the last decade. Sure, this album has its fair share of hits, but the most compelling part about the entire thing is the story that Kendrick comes up with, which is something, in my opinion at least, that he perfects on To Pimp a Butterfly. To me, this album is a building block. Kendrick needed to make this album first in order to make other albums like To Pimp a Butterfly or Damn. And this album is no small building block either. As great as Section 80 is, this album is strides ahead of that project. Good Kid was almost a make or break for Kendrick, and he knocked it out of the park. All in all, this album is so important in a contextual and lyrical standpoint, but to me, the most impressive part of it all is the storytelling. So yes, this is not my favorite Kendrick Lamar album, and we will get to Pimp a Butterfly at some point in the future. But that being said, Good Kid, M.A.A.D City is still a fantastic record. But then again, in my opinion, To Pimp a Butterfly is probably the best album of the decade, so it's kind of hard to beat that. Also, if an artist was able to come up with something like Good Kid, M.A.A.D City was able to do, and I mean pretty much any other artist, it would immediately be their best album. But the reality is, Kendrick just has so many good projects that it's hard to just pick them and rank them, you know? So, whether you've never heard this album before, or if it's a personal favorite, Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, M.A.A.D City will always be forever spinning. Happy listening.